Okay, so we have Brandi Van here with us today from brandyvan.com. She's a psychic medium and she also has a mentor program to help people with their psychic abilities. And she also has some wonderful paranormal stories that she would like to share with us. So, welcome, Brandi. It is great to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and hello to all the listeners out there. We love you so much. So I love your work here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, Brandi, I would really love to know, and our listeners would love to know, when did you start on your spiritual journey? When did you start maybe seeing spirits, hearing spirits? How do you actually recognize that they're in a space? And what led you to doing the work that you're doing now as a spiritual medium?
Yeah, sure. I didn't really have a choice. So I was a young child, and my journey was just my life. I was seeing spirits all the time. I was hearing them, and I tended to just ignore them because I didn't understand what was going on. I was afraid to tell people what was happening because they might think I was crazy or I was making it up. So I ignored it for years and years, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I was like 20 or 21, and my grandma had she was passing away. So we were like my family was all in the hospice room, and we were all crying and we were holding hands as she took her last breath. And as she took her last breath, I felt like a magnet in my stomach, and it had me like look above the bed. And I realized in that moment, I am feeling her spirit raise out of her physical body, and it's going above the bed. And everyone's looking down at her, and I'm looking above the bed, and I'm seeing these most like magnificent, brilliant colors. They were so bright, and they were forming a star and pulsing in and out like a heartbeat. And I realized in that moment, she's at peace. Her body's there, but her spirit's now up in the spirit world. I knew her angels were there to invite her into the spirit world, and it was so profound. It's still hard for me to this day to even explain in words what I was feeling. It was so profound that I actually left the room, and my cousins came out to get me. They thought I was too sad that I couldn't handle what was going on, and it took me even years after that to tell them what I had experienced because in that moment they're all upset and they're already grieving, and here I am like having this amazing experience. I almost felt guilty about it, and I just felt that my grandma wanted me to see that, and she showed me that, and with that I felt like this surge of confidence and her support in, you have to do this, you have this ability, it's not a fearful thing, it's not something to be afraid of, it's really beautiful. And that's what got me on my journey.
That is absolutely wonderful. I find that a lot of people, excuse me, a lot of people have these experiences as children, but they don't want to tell anyone. Ah, interesting. Our internet connection is unstable. This quite often happens when people are
Makes
talking about
sense.
spiritual things. We get these unstable internet connections. Tell
Yes.
us more. I would love to hear more about your journey.
Yes, that makes sense. Sure. So exactly what you said. So a lot of people when you're young think it's maybe an imaginary friend, or you're making it up. So once I started on my journey, I realized, I'm reading books, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm watching TV shows, but like I wasn't doing anything to, set the boundary with spirit, to control the ability, until I found a mentor. And it took me years to find one because they just like don't exist, which I don't know why. But once I found my mentor, within like no, actually within like 6 to 8 months, I would say my abilities just like skyrocketed. I was able to contact spirit on demand. I was able to put my boundaries up so that they only bothered me when I wanted them to, instead of just like coming in anytime. And then I was able to do the mediumship readings for people. But if I were to sit there and talk to dead people all day, I wouldn't really like my life very much. So I was like, I can't do this full time. But what I can do is I can be that mentor for other people so that they don't feel like they're crazy, and so that they have someone that says, hey, I've been there, I've done this, and I was in your shoes. Like, I didn't know how to work it. Like, you're exercising this psychic muscle, your third eye, and unless you know how to work that muscle, just like if you were to go to the gym, if no one can tell you how to work out that muscle, you don't get anywhere. So now I'm just like, that's like my passion and my mission to help other people, because I have that ability. I'm able to help them, develop their abilities, and I just love it so much.
So, what do you do with skeptics? I find I have a lot of skeptics because I work primarily, I work with the higher vibrational beings, but I also work with the dark and the demonic level energies because that's part of the work I do as a house clearer. I find a lot of
Mm,
people are totally skeptical about spiritual abilities, about psychic abilities, about the house clearing work, about mediumship. I feel that people, do you think that people are afraid, or they don't want to acknowledge it, or it challenges their perspectives on life?
sure. I think all three of those things. So I think if you have the wrong, like if you have a misconception about it, you do think it's fearful. But even if you just set your intention that only spirits of the highest realm and the highest good are able to communicate, then you don't have negative spirits. It's really like in our mind what's scary from like movies. They tell us a black figure is scary or a gray smog. So automatically you start thinking it's scary. But unless you like talk or communicate to that spirit, I mean, maybe your grandma's wearing a gray cloak that day or a black dress. Like, you don't know until you actually talk to it. So, I mean, I've only ever had one scary experience. And ever since then, once I knew how to control my ability, I've never had anything negative happen again. Um, but with the skeptics, I always go back to like 100 years ago. If someone would have said we have the internet or we're gonna have cell phones and be able to contact people, they probably would have thought that person was a witch, that they were crazy, and that would have never happened. So even right now, there's scientists working with psychics and mediums to see what's going on in our brains when we're able to communicate. So there's already research going on. And my last thing with skeptics is I always say you don't know what someone else's subjective experience is. So, two people can be on a roller coaster, one person screaming out of fear, the other person screaming out of I love this. But by looking at them, you would never know who's who because you don't ever know what someone else is experiencing. So no one can tell me that I'm not experiencing spirit because I know 100% fact that I am.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And I actually like the challenge of skeptics. I love working for them because after the work is done, especially on a home or a property or a person, they their body feels the difference. Their energy feels the difference, but their mind can't cope with it. So I just feel that it plants the seed that there is another perspective out there. So when you teach your students, what do you share with them about how spirits communicate with you? I'll say that again. Well, when I talk paranormal, I don't have speech issues, but my mouth goes out the window. Seriously. When you're working with your students, how do you explain to them that spirits communicate with you? Do you see them, hear them, feel them, know they're there? Do they touch? Do you get a taste? What is it about your psychic abilities? What is that radar? Mine is the paranormal radar for the darker beings. What are your signs and symptoms that you have when spirits want to communicate with you personally, or when you're working with a group of clients or a personal client?
Sure. So, me personally, I am clairvoyant. So, that means that I see images, visions, symbols, or like a home video. I'm not seeing it externally, I'm seeing it in my mind. And I'm also clairaudient. So, I hear them, but I hear them in my voice, but it's not my thought. So, imagine like being 10 years old and you're hearing things in your head and it's not your thought, right? So, you think you're a little crazy, but everyone's different. So everyone has a different clair sense. So, I might hear them when someone else might just feel them, or they might just have a knowing of it, or they might smell it. Everybody has their own unique ability. So in my program, I really teach them to figure out which one theirs is and then run with that. They can always learn the other ones later. Maybe sometimes you can't learn some of them. But yeah, run with that first and whatever works for them. And that seems to be the best way to do it because everybody is a little bit different on how they can get those messages.
I always find that I feel the presence of something that you can't see. But I find that some spirits or the darker energy beings will actually use the home video in the mind, Or I'll actually see it when I'm talking to a client. I'll actually see the movie at the same time that I'm talking to the client. Sometimes I see words, sometimes I hear words, sometimes I
Yeah.
know words are being presented or numbers because I work a lot with numbers, but I'm not actually hearing the numbers or seeing them written down. It's so diverse when you do this work. But what I find is when you open yourself up to the possibility that it is real and believe in it, they're going to tap into you whichever way works. Because I find spirits use particular methods. The lower vibrational beings will use other methods. Do you get a lot? I just heard the word dreams. Do you need to talk about your dreams and spirits communicate with you through your dreams?
Oh, for sure. I have the most vivid dreams, and they're actually so real that I'll wake up and like 3 days later, I have to think, wait, was that a dream or did that really happen? Because they are so real that I'm like, I sometimes it's a little scary how the realities mix together because they are so vivid. I'm also a lucid dreamer, which means that I am able to notice when I'm in the dream and then I can turn my consciousness on. So I can say, Brandi, wake up, or I can say, I'm going to change this dream. And so all of a sudden, then I'll be like, fly, and I'll go up to the sky and I'll fly, or I'll be like, come back down and do front flips, like, and your mind is saying, like, you can't do a flip. But then the other side of your mind is saying, but I'm dreaming, I can do anything I want. And I love lucid dreaming skill that you really have to practice and learn. But oh, once you get there, like, it's just so awesome. I love it.
Cool. That is so good. So, could you tell us about some of your other memorable, I'll call them paranormal experiences, but we can call them
Sure.
spiritual or spirit experiences? I love hearing people's real life experiences, things that have stuck in their mind for years.
Absolutely. So when I was working with my mentor, I found out that I am a descendant of witches. And my great grandma was a witch, and a lot of my family has psychic abilities, which I didn't know about until I started my journey and they started telling me. So I went to Salem, Massachusetts, and that's where all the witches are, right? So this was even before I had developed my psychic abilities, and oh, I had so many experiences there. So apparently all the witches in my ancestry line have been bad witches, and I'm the first one to try to do good. So I have that like kind of battle with my ancestors going on. But when I went to Salem, I was seeing orbs with my naked eye. Like wasn't even in a camera, which is when you usually see an orb. I was seeing them with my naked eye. I went to a seance, and a lot of people think that seances are negative and scary. And I had the most emotional experience. I was able to contact my grandma. It was as though she was sitting right next to me. I mean, I was crying. It was a very emotional experience. So, yeah, Salem, Massachusetts was, I have to get back there again because so much happened to me while I was there. And another one that I definitely think of a lot is anytime I visit, I'm in Philadelphia, and there is a place down by the airport called Fort Mifflin. And it's where Revolutionary War soldiers had their fort and where they would, have their families live there and everything. And every time I go there, when I get to a certain area, I get like GI issues. And I learned on one of the tours that they all like passed away or had these really bad GI issues. So I was feeling that, and then I get like weird pictures there, like just like oh something grabbed my ankle once while I was there. And then the one time that really sticks out is I was leaving the tour and I was in the parking lot, and all of a sudden I saw a full body apparition, and it was walking right across me. And now my husband is with me and he's a skeptic. So he sees it and I see it, and I'm like, do you see what I'm seeing? And he's like, yeah, do you see what I'm seeing? And so I hurry up and turn around, and there's nobody around. There's no way this is a shadow. This is an apparition. Well, I love it. So I'm like running around with my flashlight, like, is that what, like to prove that it's an apparition? And then he's like, let's get out of here. He was so freaked out. Well, I ran back to the tour guide, and he actually said, even though you were in the parking lot, that used to be a building where the soldiers would go back and forth so that they would protect the area. And so he like wasn't surprised at all that I saw this apparition. And then when I went back to the car, I saw it one more time. And the whole ride home, my husband's driving and like looking in the back seat of the car. And I'm like, he did not come home with us. He's been there for 300 years. He has no interest in coming home with us. But my husband was so freaked out, and he won't ever go back again. Even though he's a skeptic, he doesn't know, he can't explain what it was, but he knew something happened, right? So, but those are some of my favorite paranormal things. I do have one more very dark one. Remember, before I said I did have one dark experience, and this is when I was about 17, and I didn't know. I was just dabbling. I was playing with the Ouija board, not knowing what I was doing. And my friends and I, we had just had a pool party, and we were walking through the woods, and we were going to this pizza place. So there was like a path that we were going on. All of a sudden, we heard something growl at us, and so your mind thinks there's an animal. And my friends, two guys, mind you, run out of the woods and leave me there. Well, I was pushed into the brush, and I look up and I see like a half black, half white figure in front of me. And I'm thinking, like, this is not an animal. Is this someone wearing a mask? Like, am I going to be attacked? So I was able, luckily, to get up and run. And I ran back to my house and I called the cops because at that time I didn't know what it was. So the cops went back and they were like, nothing's there. And you start thinking, like, if it was an animal, it would have chased me. Why would it have stopped? And it didn't look like an animal, but why would, like, someone be back in the woods just in case some kids walk to the pizza place in the middle of the night? Like, it didn't make sense until years later I realized, oh my gosh, like, I was playing with this ability. I had no idea I brought something negative into my life, and that for sure was a demon that I had brought into my energy field.
Now, I quite often find lower vibrational beings, they will pick up on the energy of energy workers. And I don't quite know how they do it, whether our aura shines brighter, whether we're pumping out a different vibration. You walking past that particular location may have challenged or slightly threatened some energy being
Yeah,
that was there doing whatever it's doing. You're not interested in it, but you're simply just walking past there as you, but it senses the psychic, the healer, the mediumship skills that you have, and they can
yeah.
sometimes feel quite threatened themselves. So it will make its presence known. I find quite
Mm.
often they use physical means, and they will try to frighten us. But people like you and me, we just want to know more. Like, I just want to know more and more
Yeah.
and more about the dark energy beings. Seances is something that I wanted to talk about. Is that I always say to people, now this is a very general term, is to be aware of seances and using Ouija boards. And it's not that I'm doubting them or putting them down. It's just that when people who are vulnerable, or they've got mental or emotional health issues, or they've got addictions, they're in a lower vibrational state when they go to these events. And that
Mhm.
makes them a target energetically for paranormal beings. Because when people want to connect with something out there, you're not always going to get grandma or your mum or your dad or Uncle Fred. Is that there's always the higher vibrational beings present, but there's also always the lower vibrational beings present, and they will pick their target. Somehow they read our energy and know the people that are vulnerable, and then they're the people that can sometimes come away from going to seances or using Ouija boards with energetic beings attached to them. But it's purely because of that person's vulnerabilities. It's not the reader, it's not the actual
Mhm.
event of getting together with people to do the activity. It's that individual person's trauma, their life experiences, where they're at in their life, that can sometimes make them vulnerable. Do you agree with that? Do you find does that sound reasonable?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And to your point, so when you are psychic or when you do have these abilities, just like we're seeing spirit, they're also seeing us. So we're like a big white light. And especially if something's negative, of course they don't want the white light there. So of course they're going to psychically attack you, as so a term is called. So yeah, someone who the problem with that is that someone doesn't know if they're low vibration. So they might go to the reading or they might go to the seance not knowing that. And so it's really important to, and if I can share with the audience, just to protect your energy, just envision a white light around you and just have that white light be your protection and really believe it, see it, feel it, know it's there. And so even if you aren't low vibration, or if you are, you're still protecting your energy just in case. Because you wouldn't want something to happen that, that you might not want to have happen. Yeah,
No, no, that's right. I used to work as a paranormal tour guide at a location here
cool.
in Tasmania. I loved it. I absolutely loved being there. But after about 18 months, the spirits at this location, because it was a mental health facility, there was a lot of spirits there that they were sad, they were depressed, they were lonely. Some I helped transition, some didn't want to go for their own reasons. But they would come to my house all the time and talk to me, which is okay because I'm a fully fledged paranormal addict. So I do this 24/7. It's just my lifestyle. But they were saying to me, "We don't want you there. We don't want you there. This is not for you." The realm of paranormal investigation is very different to the work that you and I do as energy workers. And the spirits were starting to show me negative things that happened to them while they were in this location because it was a mental health facility from back in the 1800s. Not a lot of people have seen what they've shown me. And for me to then continue going there, I felt that I was kind of not betraying their trust. That's the words that came to mind. They just said to me basically, paranormal investigation is not the approach for you. So I was a little bit sad giving that up because I really, really loved being there. But they were just saying to me, no, we don't want you here. And I always listen. If a spirit or a low vibrational being is telling you something, it's because they want you to know their side of things. And they said to me, no, this isn't for you. So I honoured that. Do you find that you get some really unusual, strange, weird, wacky messages from spirits?
No.
No?
My messages are always like very straightforward. They're always like high vibrational, uplifting, yeah, helping people. So
That's
I
okay.
don't know.
It's a fascinating world. Like it's never ending. Do you feel that you're always learning something new from the work that you do?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I love it so much because I feel like I will never stop learning. There is so much to this. I mean, think about it. It's a whole other realm. It's a whole other dimension. Like there's so much to learn from it. So it's just amazing to see my clients and how they transform. And then they give me ideas and I'm like, I never thought of that. Let me add that to the program. Like I'm just learning from other people. I'm learning from spirit. Like it just fascinates me. I just love it so much. Absolutely.
So, as we're about to finish up with our interview, would you like to tell people about your mentor program that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm doing it over Zoom because that's just how the pandemic went, right? So it's a lot easier, and I find that it works better because you're really in the comfort of your own home, where you're most likely going to be connecting with spirit anyway. But it's a 3 month program, and I really go through the A to Z of what people need to do. And it's great to see people who are like, I think I have an ability, but then at the end of the program, they are on their way. They have accelerated, they've empowered themselves, they're not afraid to talk about it anymore. And they are able to, some people are able to heal, other people are able to cross spirits over. Like they're doing things that I never even did, and now they're doing it. And so I love watching that transformation. The biggest thing is people have a lot of self doubt. And so when you don't trust your intuition or you're not trusting message from spirit, your ego is getting in the way. Your rational mind is telling you, you can't do this. This isn't real. And that's a huge thing that people need to overcome while they're in the program because they'll probably give up if I didn't tell them like, no, you got to work past that. When your inner critic gets louder, that's when you need to really push through because see it as your best friend that's encouraging you versus something negative. So I really have to be like their cheerleader and tell them like, no, you're meant to be a light worker. You're meant to help the world, and I'm going to get them there. So I just love it so much.
Absolutely. And I always say to people just because you can't see something and tangibly touch it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
know when I work, even on a long distance home, I worked on a home in Florence, Italy. And I mean, I'm in Tasmania, which is way, way, way at the bottom of the world. When people feel a tangible difference energetically, physically, mentally, and emotionally after the energy work's been done, they then go, oh my God, this is real. It is real. So
Hmm.
you just need to keep plugging away with the message that psychic abilities are real. They are viable. They are necessary to navigate this world that's around us. That's really, really important. I just keep on with my message all the time. So, Brandi, how can people get in contact with you to learn more about your mentor program?
Sure. So my website is brandyvan.com. That's Brandy with an I. And if they want to book a discovery call, I would love to hear about their experiences and see if they're a good fit for the program. So yeah, that's really the best way that they can get a hold of me.
That's wonderful. And I really want to thank you for coming on Perfectly Paranormal today. I have loved meeting you and loved hearing about what you do as a spiritual medium and, of course, all your wonderful paranormal stories.
Thank you so much for having me. I really loved this conversation.
Thanks, Brandy.